Zoom meeting. Hard to believe that we are already in 2024, but we are. And I'm certainly glad to have everyone here and to have everyone who will be listening to this as a podcast or be watching it as a YouTube video. I've been very much looking forward to this meeting. My name is Robert. My call sign is NC5R. We have a very interesting guest with us this evening who's going to tell us about a device that he has dreamed up, designed, created the hardware, built, added the software, wrote the software, and brought this device to market. So I've been looking forward to us having a chance to really talk about this because it has some special interest for all of us, which sort of happened in a way by accident. We'll get into all that. But before we get into our presentation, I'd like to have the CQ Blindham podcasters who are here this evening to have a chance to say hi to everyone. And we'll go ahead and start with you. Go ahead and start with you, Joel, W0CAS. Please unmute yourself and say hi to everybody.
Am I still muted?
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought I unmuted it. It kept saying you're muted, unmuted. Anyway, welcome to everybody to the CQ Blindham's podcast for January. Like Robert said, this is a kickoff of a brand new and exciting year, and we have a new device that is going to give some accessibility to several radios, and we're looking forward to it. And we'd like to thank our guests for being with us tonight. Back to you, Robert.
All right. Well, thank you, Joel. And thank you for all that you do for this CQ Blindham's podcast and the website and everything else. Steve, WB2KTV, is here with us tonight. Good evening, Steve. Please unmute yourself and say hi to everyone.
Good evening, Robert. WB2KTV in New York here. I'm an ex-HFer. Everybody keeps trying to get me back on the low bands, but been there, done that. I don't think it's going to happen. Not unless I win the lottery and can set up an antenna farm somewhere where I really want to. Other than that, I'm pretty active on the higher bands, at least the regular ones, UHF and VHF. One of these days, I'd like to do some 900 megahertz stuff just for fun, just to say that I did it. Otherwise, I fully support anybody who wants to get on HF, and I'll help them the best I can. And this device will certainly do that. Apparently, it connects with a lot of different new radios, and that's what I want to hear about.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve, and I'm glad you're here and hope you win that lottery and you get on HF one of these days. That would be excellent. Angelo, if you're able to grab a microphone from behind the control board there, come on in and say hello to everyone, if you will.
Welcome aboard, everybody. It's going to be a great topic. And that's all I got, Robert. And to Duane.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. Are there any other CQ Blindham podcasters that I have failed to introduce? I don't think so, but if there's anybody that's logged in that I'm not aware of, please come forward.
Is that for anybody? This is my first time, but this is Simone K6DXN, and thank you for this.
Well, thank you, Simone. Nice to meet you. We're actually we're just looking for people who are part of the CQ Blindham podcast group who produced the podcast here. But welcome. I'm glad you're here, and we will be doing a question answer session a little later. So stay around, and you'll have a chance to ask questions and make comments if you like. So thanks for being here. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on then to
mute and let you guys unmute.
All right. So I'm should be unmuted. Are you hearing me okay now, Angela?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right, very good. We're going to get on with the program here this evening, and I'm going to introduce our special guest, whose name is Lynn Hansen. Let me just say that I have been in amateur radio quite a long time, and I've had the good fortune to meet many talented people over the years. It's rarer to meet someone who has the skill set to come up with an idea of a problem that you would like to solve, design a piece of hardware to solve that problem, create the necessary software that gives that piece of hardware the smarts that it needs to carry out the instructions to solve the problem. Then to figure out how to get all of this working in a way that is straightforward and simple enough for the average person to use, and then bring something like this to market and make it available for people to purchase. But that just so happens to be the skill set that our presenter, Lynn, brings to the table. And it just sort of, I think, happened that a couple of blind hams, Gina, M0 Echo Bravo Papa, and Chris, VE3RWJ, I think happened to see an email about this device that we're going to be talking about. And they I think wondered, or especially Gina began to wonder, if the device might be useful to someone who's blind for controlling radios, mostly HF radios, but there are a few radios in the list that also have VHF and UHF frequencies on them as well. So Gina reached out to Lynn, and interestingly enough, but not terribly surprising, Lynn had never even really thought of accessibility issues that hams who are blind might struggle with. But immediately, Lynn being Lynn, immediately became very interested in this whole accessibility arena, and has worked with Gina over the last few months to turn his website, Lynovation.com, from a somewhat inaccessible website with lots of moving banners, and I don't know exactly what was there before, but into a very accessible website. And the same enthusiasm has come to Lynn to work on making his devices that he designs and builds and makes available to hams accessible. And we're here to talk tonight about one device in particular that I'm sure got Gina's attention, because it's a device that enables you to control a radio, but the device doesn't have any display on it. It just has a knob and 3 programmable buttons, and it outputs the information that it gets back from the radio about frequency mode and band and some menu items and all that kind of stuff. It outputs that information in CW. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. And Lynn, if you don't mind, if you would just go ahead and unmute yourself, I would love to hear you comment a little bit on the skill set that you have. How did you get to the place where you are, where you get an idea, you design hardware, you write software for it, you make it all work? Tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Is my audio okay?
Your audio is fine. Please go
Okay,
ahead.
I know we had to tweak that a little bit. Well, just to give you kind of a background on myself, I've been licensed since 1971. I was licensed at 14 years old, and so I've been involved more or less with ham radio pretty much my whole life. And it turned into a kind of a career for me. I went into started working for electric utility out here in the West. I live in Lava Hot Springs, Idaho. And if you know anything about Idaho, you have Pocatello and Idaho Falls on the east side of the state. Well, I'm just maybe 50 miles southeast or southeast of Pocatello. So just kind of down in the southeast corner of Idaho. So, and right now we're right in the middle of a blizzard. We have pretty good snow going on outside, and it's forecasted to go for next couple of days. So, but I've got a ranger to keep my driveway plowed out. We live in the country. Lava's a pretty small town, but anyway, my background comes from the electric utility, power utility, and I started in a coal generator steam plant as an operator trainee, and found out they had a position for electronic technicians. At the time, I guess part of my background is I don't have any formal schooling to do this. I've never been to college. Everything that I know, I learned through home study and just being too dumb to know that what I don't know. So I just kind of forge ahead. When I get an idea, I do what it takes to bring it to what I want it to be. And so over the years, I've delved into different projects and different designs, and I've been doing this for 50 years, so I've kind of got a feel for what I want and what it should do. And but anyway, my career was communications technician. I worked on, at the time, was analog microwave and VHF radios and dispatch systems and all that kind of stuff that does what electric utilities need, including the power line carrier that caused a lot of grief a few years ago for hams. But I eventually ended up into a management position and spent the last 20 years of my career managing Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming areas in the company. So, but I guess to kind of touch just lightly on that, that was one of the reasons that I really get into doing the firmware and doing the design and the hardware and everything else, because as a manager, I just felt the need to keep my hands in the technology. When you're working in a company that's a union company and you're in supervision, you don't touch equipment. That's what the technicians are there for. And so I really miss that part about my job. I spent the first 17 years as a technician, and I just always had the itch to turn something, or solder something. So anyway, I started designing radio controllers back in the early 2000s. And the first one I did was a Bluetooth plug-in radio controller, and it had a companion software for the Pocket PC. And I actually had that one published back in February 2007 in QST. And so that was kind of fun. But I've always been gravitated, for some reason, the radio's sitting there with the COM port on it, the CAT port, and it's just begging to be controlled. And that for some reason just intrigues me. And so over the years, I kind of haven't done anything with radio control until about 2020. And then the sort of something major happened in April of 2020. And I'd only been retired for about a year. So found myself with a whole lot of time and no place to go, and decided, you know what, I had to revisit that radio controller and see what I can do with it. Really, at the time, I bought myself a Flex radio for my retirement gift, since nobody else wanted to buy me anything. So I had a Flex radio, and the thing that I really missed the most about it is tuning it. I just always felt like I needed a knob. So the project started the concept of basically designing a tuning knob for my Flex radio. And so I had to go down that rabbit hole and found out how to control a flex radio. And then while I was at it, I thought, well, I just as well bring in some of these other radios that I developed protocols for with my Bluetooth interface and the program, which was just called CTR back then. CTR means control the radio. CTR2, I added a 2 to CTR with the latest devices because they don't just control the radio. There's a whole lot more to them. And I keep finding other things to add to them. And so far it's worked out pretty well. But so CTR2 means control the radio 2. And I started out with the CTR2, which was a pretty good size system. There was tons of cards. They were in a card stack. You could have about 8 or 9 cards, and each card had a different function, and it was all based on a TNC 4.1 processor. It could do everything. It could switch antennas. It had a voice synthesizer. It had decoding capabilities, and it could do RTTY decoding and encoding, and it did everything. And I had it all built, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I got it, actually 2 articles on it published in QEX. And that was September, October of 2020, and January, February 2021, they published articles on my CTR2 device, which was great, but it was so complicated, nobody wanted it. And I didn't even, after I had it all built, it was kind of like, well, that's nice, but I didn't even use it that much, other than as an antenna switch and decoding and a few things like that. But so anyway, since it didn't go anywhere in the market, I rethought the whole concept and came up with what I called CTR2 Mini. And what that was a radio controller with a built-in little display. It was based on a Seed Studio YO terminal is what it's called. It's just a small embedded processor with a little small display on it. And it worked out really well. And I went through several versions of it, and the current version is called CTR2 Mini Plus. And it does pretty much everything you need a radio controller to do. And that one actually went, I had that one published in QST, I think September of 2022. And then May of 2023, QST did a review on it. It was pretty favorable. You're always worry about reviews, but anyways, then after that was published, I got the idea that it was still pretty expensive. It's $140, and I only sell it assembled and or board kits, and so not there's a few people that wanted it, and I've sold probably 50 of them, and that, which is pretty okay for just a small business. I build these things in my basement, and I do everything myself and sweep the floor up and turn the lights off when I'm done. So after the review came out, I got kind of inspired to try and see what I could do to minimize the hardware requirements for CTR2. And one of the things was to eliminate the display. The display cost $40 for just the display and the little microprocessor in it. And so by eliminating that, I felt like I could get the price down below $100. Well, it did even better than that, because by cutting back on some of the other things that it was doing, I got the price down to where the kit cost $30, and the assembled CTR2 Micro, I call it a Micro now because it's so small, it costs $47. That's complete, ready to go, plug and play. So anyway, but the fact that it doesn't have a display kind of led me down the path of how do you control this thing? Yeah, you could have a tuning knob and you could have a couple of buttons that did predefined functions, but the end result is you really need more than that. This thing does a lot. It's got a built-in keyer, memory keyer, contest keyer. It controls quite a few radios, most ICOMs, most Kenwoods, not all of them, but most of them. It controls the FTDX series of Yaesu radios. It controls the FT 817, 857, 897 series of radios. It controls the FTD or FT 100, the old one. And it controls Electcraft and Zygu and trying to think of what else I missed. Oh, it also does the, if you've seen the Hermes Light 2, it's an SDR radio. It's a network interface, and it actually can control that now. So, and it also controls the old ICOM PCR 1000 receiver, which is kind of handy because that thing goes up to gigahertz, and the micros and the mini, both of them, they're totally capable of controlling radios up in the gigahertz range, the frequency range. I have a ICOM 9700 that does VHF, UHF, and EHF, and it can even go higher, but it can control that. And so it brings a lot of things to the table that radios kind of have the stuff built into them, but a lot of them bury it all in menus, and it's really hard to get to. So the Micro, what it does is, besides just giving you a tuning knob, it has the 3 programmable function buttons on them that actually have, in true ham format, they have a short press and a long press function. So you have 6 programmable functions that you can program to specific things in the radio that you want to control. So that's kind of, kind of the nutshell of what it is. And like I said, especially being retired, I have a lot of time, and I have interest in all these different areas: circuit board design, firmware design, hardware design, all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of fun to have the capability of rolling it all together and getting something out of it that's actually useful and something that other people find useful. And I think that's what I was telling Robert. I designed the CW code reporting function kind of as a way to be able to control this thing without a display. You can plug it in, it'll actually support a web browser, so you can use a web browser to configure it and operate it. It has a terminal interface, so a telnet terminal, you can connect that to it either from a serial port or Wi-Fi and control it with the telnet interface. But I wanted to be able to run it standalone, so if it's just sitting on the desk, I mean, the thing's tiny. It's only about 2.5 inches square and about 1 inch tall, plus the knob on top. So it's really small, and it's pretty inintrusive on your desk, and it has quite a lot of features to it. But I designed the code report so that you could navigate the menus, and the thing would kind of tell you where it's at in code. And when Gina got a hold of me about it, I really hadn't thought about going any farther than that. But Gina got a hold of me about it and was interested in it as a blind ham. And I thought, well, it does the code report, so there you go. And it's like, yeah, but I don't know the code. She's learning it, but she doesn't know it well enough to use it. And the majority of hams don't know the code. There's, some of us that enjoy the code and see it as a useful mode. A lot of people that's just not their thing. So, and one of the things Robert brought up, and Gina's brought it up too, and kind of my gut reaction is, no, not right now, is the fact that would it support a voice synthesizer? And so my gut reaction was, no, it doesn't. It can't do that. But then Robert brought it up that, that's probably something that blind hams would be pretty interested in. Gina talked about the ham pod several times to me, and I just didn't catch the vision, I guess you will. And as I thought about it more and more, I thought, there's no reason why I can't support a synthesizer, because I already pass the text and the menus and the frequencies and the modes and all that stuff. I already passed that to a routine that sends the code out, basically loads the keyer to key it out. So I've already had it in that mode. I just need to be able to deliver that to a speech synthesizer. And so last week I got inspired and ordered one in. And I'm pretty happy to say that it actually works pretty good. The speech synthesizer I've got on it right now isn't a very good one. It's out of China and has a very distinct Chinese accent, even though it's supposed to be English. But it does, and I can do a kind of a presentation on that if I've got it sitting here and I've got a camera on it. But anyway, it will give you the opportunity to operate your radio with the voice, and it also, like the HampPod changed radio frequency, it'll tell you that, but this one's controllable. So you turn the knob to a new frequency, it'll tell you that. You push the button, then go to the menus function, it'll tell you which menu you're in, and you'll be able to navigate with an audio voice. I'm not happy with the synthesizer I've got right now. It's, it was cheap, it was $30, and so you get what you pay for. I've ordered another one in that's based on a different chipset, and that should be here, I think, sometime next week. And so I'll play with that one and see if that's any better. I found several other voice synthesizers on the internet, and probably the best one out there is called text speak or something to that line. And that one sounds almost really natural and has a really good output on it. It's also pricey. It's about $100. I did find the I think it's the RC Systems, the double talk one that the HampPod's based on. And, that technology is probably, 15, 20 years old now. And it sounds like a robot. I mean, it's intelligible, but it sounds like a robot. And it's $75 for the board that does that. So I'm thinking the next step, I've contacted TechSpeak to see if I can get a sample device. They only sell them to OEMs. They're not really selling them to the hobby market because they say they're under $100 in quantity. So I don't know. There are other boards that you can buy off the shelf for like $300. So that seems like an awful lot for a little board. So, but anyway,
let me jump in here, Lynn, and because I cannot resist describing to people just how this has unfolded. I talked to Lynn on the phone one day a week or two ago, and we had a nice long chat for more than an hour. We talked about a lot of things, and that was when Lynn was kind of saying, well, my micro outputs in CW doesn't support speech. It could, but I'm not really, that's not where I'm at. And maybe 2 or 3 days later, I got an email from Lynn saying, it finally hit me that I already have the code and everything that I need to interface a speech synthesizer box with the micro, and I could make this thing speak the information that's coming from the radio. And I'm gonna keep that in mind, and I'm gonna work on it in the next year or two and see what we can do with this. Another day or two later, I got an email. Well, I went on and ordered a speech synthesizer, and I sort of have it working. And then a day or two after that, I got an email. Here's a sample of how this thing works. So what has happened here is Lynn has gotten on fire with this idea of making the micro not only output in CW, but also output to a speech synthesizer. And along with that, he's gotten on fire with the idea of accessibility. And it's just rare in my experience when someone who has the energy, the enthusiasm, and the skill set comes along and gets excited about this. And here we go. And I just want to say thank you for that, Lynn, first of all. But second, I'm just amazed and having so much fun, honestly, participating in this process as it's developing. And so, wow, what happened? You got on fire with this thing here.
Well, my years are kind of short. Maybe a day or two is like a year to me. I think it's part of it is I'm a problem solver. And I think that's why I always enjoyed being a technician, ComTech, because I always looked forward to a piece of equipment that was broken or malfunctioning or not set up right. To me, that was just rewarding to be able to dig into it and figure out what was wrong with it, solve the problem, and get it back functioning. You know, when working with in a power company, you know, failure's not an option. Every piece of equipment we had that we maintained was there for a specific purpose, and that was to get power down the line and deliver it to customers. And we had systems that our dispatch control system centers could control all that. We had 300 base stations, VHF base stations on our service territory. Our service territory is 7 states, and we were really spread out. We had, at the time I was a technician, we had analog microwave. We had 600 channel analog microwave systems, all the way down to 32 channel microwave systems, and they were all analog. Everything was analog, and so I always enjoyed the challenge of solving the puzzle, and that's exactly what Robert presented to me, was a problem to be solved. And I realized that I was already probably 90% there, just because I designed a device that didn't have a display. And to be honest, I designed it that way on purpose because I wanted the challenge of how do you take something like a knob and actually turn it into something useful, something more than what it is, just to turn it to change frequency.
Okay, well, this is a great opportunity, I think, to really dig into the micro a little bit. Let me just slow it down and make sure I understand. What I get is that the micro is a tiny little device with a knob on the top. The knob, you can turn it. You can also push the knob in to do certain things. There are also 3 programmable buttons that have 6 functions. And there are some connectors on the device that let you connect it to a radio, so that you can control that radio. And there's also a USB-C connector, so that you can connect the device to a computer. Do I basically have the concept of what the device is, correct?
Yeah, and I can kind of go through it a little bit. I've actually got one right here for anybody that that is sighted, or anybody that's watching this on YouTube. This is what it looks like. Like I said, it's about 2.5 inches square, a little under that. And if you look at it right, from the top down, it has the knob in the middle. It's a pretty nice aluminum knob. I found it over in China, of course, and so I ordered those in. But anyway, looking at the top down, the knob's sort of in the middle of the little box. It's a 2.5 inch square box, and the knob's pretty much in the middle. Then the 3 buttons are on the left hand side, and they number 1, 2, 3 from the bottom up. And button 1 and 2 are grouped together, so physically you can feel which button you're on just by whether it's got a button next to it or not. So on that same left side, on the edge of the box, is where the USB-C connector is. And I use a 90-degree angle USB-C connector, so it comes out and points the cable heading away from the device. But if you turn a device up towards you, on the top, what would be the top edge, is there's 3 1/8 inch stereo jacks across the top edge. And the one on the left is where you'd plug your paddles in. The one in the middle is where you'd plug a cat cable. And I sell and have the schematics for a lot of different cat cables. Some are really easy to connect to, like ICOM with their CIV interface. You just plug in a stereo jumper cable, basically an 1/8 inch stereo to 1/8 inch stereo cable, and plug that right into the control port on the ICOM. And that's your control cable. The other ones, it'll do RS-232 with the DB9. For the Yaesu, like my FT-DX101 has a 9-pin connector on it. I have other ones that'll do the little DIN 8 connector for the Yaesu FT 817 series, and then the third jack on the right, looking down from the top, is the key push to talk output. So it'll generate a key output and a push to talk output. And one of the features that one of my users suggested, which I thought was a great suggestion, was when you're in voice mode, would it be possible to use the paddle input as a push to talk switch? So if you think about it, a lot of people have foot switches, or they have a mic switch, or they have some way to key the mic up on their radio. Well, this gives you the ability to use your paddles. So when you're on the voice mode, you just can grab your paddle and hit your paddle to key up your radio. And to go one step farther with that idea, if you hit the dit side of the paddle, on mine it's the left side, that'll actually latch the push to talk. So you hit the dit once, latch the push to talk as long as you want, up to 2.5 minutes before the watchdog timer takes you down. Tap it again to drop the transmit. If you hit the DOS side of the paddle, that's just a momentary, so you can key that up, drop it off as you're, got a short contest exchange or whatever that you just want to say a little bit, key it up, drop it off. So you don't need a separate push to talk switch with the micro. Anyway, that's pretty much about it. There isn't a whole lot to it. It's just a little tiny guy, and there's not a lot of parts to it. Like I said, this was a design exercise, a challenge to myself to see what I could build with not a lot of parts. And I think it's been pretty good. It's been pretty successful. I'm approaching 100 units out there in the field, and for a small little basement business, that's not too bad in 4 months. So
yeah, very cool. And just before we leave that part of the selling part of it, just to reiterate, the micro is available on your website, lynovation.com, for $30 in kit form, and for $47 in fully assembled form. You will assemble it yourself for someone and test it and all that.
yeah.
And then you have various cables and things that people can purchase it to interface it in various ways. And in just a moment, I want to talk about the 3 interfaces. But before we do that, am I correct that about the information I just gave about what's available on the website?
Yeah, that plus the cables are available for the different radios, and I've got a breakout cable for the push to talk and key, so you don't have to wire that up mostly. Sometimes getting push to talk in your radio can be a challenge. Not every radio is designed with an RCA jack or something on the back like the Flex radio for push to talk. So, but anyway, one of the things also that I'll do, if you let me know that you're a blind ham, when I do an assembled unit, I pre-program in your call sign. Part of the keyer contest keyer has pro signs, you can put messages together for the keyer and embed your call sign with just using the caret character. So you program in your call sign. So I always, on assembled units, I test everything, make sure everything works, and I always program in the purchaser's call sign. So to extend that a little bit, if you let me know you're a blind ham, probably the easiest thing to do would be to give me your phone number so I can call you. But I can also pre-program in your Wi-Fi credentials so that when you get the unit, I can even say it has an option to set up auto connect. So when you got the unit, you just plug in a USB connector, plug it into your computer, and it'll power itself up and it'll connect to your internet without you having to go in and mess around with that. What's one of the things that I've learned recently working with Gina on this, as a person that's always had sight and always taken it for granted, I have no clue the challenges that you guys face every day. And so I've been able to kind of, through Gina and Robert, kind of get a feel for what is needed by, it's easy to say, well, yeah, just close your eyes and that's what you're dealing with. but it's hard for somebody with sight, even the way my manual's written. You know, I write the manual, I put all the information in there, and I have a lot of diagrams, and I have a lot of screenshots of the menus and explain what everything does. Well, that's just fine, except the person without sight can't see the pictures, can't see the diagrams. So, you know, so I've been trying to
Yeah,
work around that, you know, to
that
make it
is true.
accessible. So,
What you're saying is exactly true. And I would also add that your manual is very, very descriptive in words. There are one or two areas that you and I will talk about that I would like a little more
yeah, exactly.
explanation of. Setting of dip switches, for example, is one area. There's a table there that it's hard to interpret that table. But the point is, if anyone really wants to investigate this little micro device further, the manual on the website is downloadable in a PDF format, or it can be read online in HTML. The manual is very accessible. I believe Angela has even put a Word version of it somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw that somewhere. But the point is, the documentation is in process in terms of accessibility. I know you're working on eventually going to be releasing an appendix to the manual that has some descriptions, especially for people who are blind or vision impaired.
Yeah.
But before we leave it completely, one question about the kit form, Lynn. You know, we do have blind hams who do their own soldering and so forth. I know soldering is part of building the kit. I have no idea to whether or not how difficult or it would be or wouldn't be for a blind ham to build a kit.
That's hard to say. I'd say for a normal, you know, person that is a kit builder, it's probably a little bit above beginner, but a little bit below a medium skilled builder. It's very simple. Everything's through hole components. You know, you have to solder some pins onto the little microprocessor. I use the ESP32 C3 processor, and so you have to solder the header pins on that to plug into the board to solder to the board. So you got that, and then there's 3 audio jacks. There's a volume control, a small little volume control, a little piezo speaker. You know, the other thing is that, and I didn't touch on that before, but because it can actually, all the radios that it controls have different formats. You're all aware of the different types of formats every radio has. You have a normal TTL levels like the old Yaesu FT 817. Those types of the older radios use TTL serial to them. You have the RS-232, or it's basically inverted TTL. RS-232 levels, and you also have the CIV standard for ICOM, which is basically normal TTL levels, but it's a 2-wire bus. You basically short out the transmit and receive, and it transmits and receives in half duplex on TTL. Also, the micro brings to the table, because I designed it for the Flex originally, it brings the table internet protocol based connectivity, so it can connect to any radio that has IP connectivity. And I use that quite a bit on some of the other things. And talking about the voice synthesizer, the voice synthesizer in my plan is it'll be a separate device that you'll be able to, and I'm shooting to make it about the same size as what the micro is right now. Whether it makes it that small or not is debatable, depending on the processor that I end up using, the voice processor. But my goal is to make it a standalone device that you can just set somewhere in your shack, plug it into 5 volts or into a USB slot on your computer, and it connects to your network. It has a telnet port on it that you can connect to it to program it, and it'll connect to your Wi-Fi network. And then the micro, you just tell the micro what the little synthesizer's address is, IP address on your local system, and it'll automatically just start setting data to it. There's nothing else you'll have to do. They won't be connected. They'll be totally independent and separated. And so you can put the voice synthesizer anywhere it's convenient. You can put the micro next to your keyboard or wherever you want it. And so, because not everybody's going to want a voice synthesizer. One of the things the voice synthesizer will offer for sighted or hams that do have sight is it'll have a LCD display on it, so they'll actually show the menu functions and the frequency and the modes and all that stuff as you change it on the micro. So it basically becomes its own miniature little terminal, even though the micro doesn't have a display. This voice synthesizer will bring that to the table. So, and it depends on the synthesizer. I find if I have to go with the expensive $100 one, which I probably will, just because the audio is so much better and so much more natural. It sounds 10 times better than the double talk synthesizer. And for $25 more, it's worth the price if I can get them in quantities of 10 or something like that. So, but anyway, that's kind of where it's at right now. At least in my mind, that's where it's at. So
Yeah, of course, and what a cool place that it's at the moment. And but I want to leave time for people to ask whatever questions they have. But
okay.
I want us to quickly kind of go through just one more time the three interfaces, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. But I want people
Sure.
to understand that when you buy a micro, you can use it as a standalone device. Just plug it in to your radio, and at the moment, it will give you output from your radio in CW. So that's how that standalone interface works at the moment. It will someday, probably in the next 2 or 3 lynn years, work with a speech synthesizer. That's in process at the moment. That's a standalone mode. Another mode is, which you have to use to set up micro, is a terminal mode where you would need to connect the micro to a computer through a USB-C cable and run a terminal application like TerraTerm or PuTTY on a PC or a Mac, and connect through the COM port and talk to the micro that way to provide your basic settings for your station, telling them which radio you're going to be using it with, and keyer speed and some things like that.
Yeah.
And you can also see the information that's coming back from the radio inside that terminal program. So that's kind of the second way to interface. But while you're setting it up, you can also give the micro your Wi-Fi credentials and have it connect to your Wi-Fi system, and then you can use a standard web browser, which is the third way. You could just go to a web page where you get the IP address from the micro, open that IP address on your browser, on your PC or Mac or whatever you use to browse the internet.
Even your cell phone or iPad.
Or on your cell phone, great point. Yep, on your cell phone. And then when you have that web page open, you essentially have the same information for controlling the radio and the micro that you have from the terminal interface. So as long as you engage a computer in the process, you really have 2 additional ways to control the micro and to get feedback on what you're changing on your radio through a terminal program or a web browser. Did I do an okay job of summarizing that?
Yeah, but you missed the fourth one. There's actually a fourth way that's in process right now. It's kind of like the voice synthesizer, but I've been working on it for a couple of weeks, so it's farther along. The micro has the ability to become a MIDI controller. MIDI is used for music and some radio control programs, especially the one that I'm focused on, is the iPad, or it's Smart DSR, or I can't remember he's got a couple other programs for radios, and it's Marcus DL8 MRE is his call. He writes the program for Flex to support the Mac and the iPad. And so the idea is his program supports MIDI input, so you can buy like a stream controller, whatever they call them, or a little DJ box or whatever that you'd use to control an instrument or something like that, and you can map that into his program. Well, one of my users emailed Marcus and said, "Hey, this is a neat little device. Is there any way we can integrate that into your program?" And so Marcus got a hold of me, and we kind of batted ideas back and forth. And I thought, sure, that should be able to happen. So yeah, it does have the capability right now of becoming a MIDI controller that you can basically connect it to Marcus's iPad program. I don't have a Mac, so I haven't ever tested the Mac version of it, but I can connect it to his iPad program, map the encoder maps as a frequency tuning knob, and then you can map up to 6 other controls for the encoder for different things like volume control or any one of the control change devices in MIDI. And then the 3 push buttons and the 6 button functions that they provide can be mapped to individual things like changing bands or changing mode. So you do a band up and band down, and mode up, mode down, that kind of stuff. And so you put well, let me back up a little bit. What I found out when I started work on this project is the processor that I chose for the micro wasn't the fastest processor that they offer, and it's not the most capable. It's just a single core ARM processor, where the ESP32S3 processor has more memory, is a faster processor, and it has dual cores. Well, come to find out, the C3 processor that I use can't support the MIDI library the same time it's supporting Wi-Fi, because they have to use Bluetooth MIDI because the USB port doesn't support USB MIDI. So I have to support Bluetooth MIDI to connect to Marcus's program. So anyway, long story short is I've written another program for the micro that turns it into just a MIDI controller. So you put this program on the micro and you lose all the other functions, the keyer and all that other stuff, but it becomes a dedicated controller for Marcus's program or any other program that runs on a Wi-Fi or on the iPad or Mac. It doesn't connect to Windows for some reason. I haven't figured that out yet, but anyway, it basically can be used as a MIDI controller on Marcus's program. So things like if you're operating remote, it'll also take the paddle inputs, and he's going to modify his program so that you can actually use the paddle inputs and key your Flex radio through the Flex link remotely, so you can be anywhere in the world and use your paddles to control your radio back in your shop. The micro can do that on its own and connect to Flex radio. But if I'm outside of my local area network, I have to push the Flex port through the router and connect to that. But it's a non-authenticated port, so anybody that knows it's there can connect to my radio, and so that's a security issue. So this gives you the fourth way to use the micro. The advantage of you going with the voice synthesizer is the little ESP32 that I'm using on that can control MIDI. So I can actually, if you have the voice synthesizer option, you basically have a MIDI option along with all the other functions the micro does. It just uses the other processor to control MIDI. So anyway, yeah, so there are 4 different ways that you can use this thing, which is pretty amazing for a little tiny processor that fits on a postage stamp. So
yeah, and the exciting thing about the MIDI, and thank you so much for getting me straight on that one, bringing that one back up. The exciting thing about the MIDI option with the iPad is that I know that people, other blind hams have tried that software and have found it really lacking in terms of accessibility in the ability in being able to do things like figuring out how to accessibly change bands or change frequencies on the iPad with this software. But it's possible. This is all theory. We don't know yet. We haven't seen it in action. But it's possible that the MIDI interface will be just the thing to bring more complete accessibility to being able to control a flex radio or other radios from the iPad in combination with the micro. So, I mean, it's really an exciting possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can, and you'll be able to use the voice processor with your iPad as you can, and you'll be able to use the micro to tune it and change bands, and the voice or the voice synthesizer will announce the changes you make. And even when you make changes on the iPad itself, it'll announce the changes that you make or whatever. So to me, it's pretty exciting. And, and I guess the end of the day, like I told Robert, the way I feel about this whole thing is, I have a skill set that not a lot of people have. And if there's something I can do for the blind ham community that makes your life a little easier or makes your enjoyment of ham radio just a little better, then why shouldn't I support that? I'm not trying to make money doing this. I mean, if the prices that I'm selling this for are just a little bit, gives me enough money to buy more parts to build more. I'm retired. I have a good retirement from the company I worked with. The market's not doing terrible right now, so we have food to eat and we have our house. I'm totally out of debt. I don't need to make money anymore. But I do need to feel like I'm doing something contributing to ham radio because it's been so good to me over the years. But anyway, let's do if anybody has any questions, would be a good time to ask. I don't want to drag this out too long. I know everybody has a schedule that they want to fit this in.
Yeah, we have a person with their hand raised. Please go ahead with your question. You will need to unmute. I'm not sure who it is. I'm for some reason not able to see who's got their hand raised. Okay, I think it was maybe David Allen had your hand raised, but you've lowered it. So I'm not sure why. But David, did you have a question?
John.
Okay, maybe we'll.
I have a question when it's my turn. This is K6DXN Simon.
Go ahead, K6DX.
Yeah, this is K6DXN. First of all, Lynn, you are awesome. I've been listening to this whole thing, and I just was telling my wife how excited I am about this. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I think it's awesome. We need more people like you. I'm located in Northern California near Placerville, and I've been to Idaho. I was in Idaho last summer visiting my friends up in Spirit Lake, Northern Idaho, and it's how blessed you are to live up there.
Well, I'm not on the north end. I'm down on the south end.
Yeah, I have friends in Meridian. I have friends in Meridian. I'm familiar. It's a beautiful place. If I can convince my wife to move there, but anyway, that's a whole nother story for another day.
I tell people, heaven's got to be cold. They say, "Why do you say that?" I says, "Because I live in heaven and it's cold." We're gonna
amen to that, brother.
We'll be minus 16 next week. So
yeah, I'm trying to get her used to up here, Northern Cal. We're from Southern Cal, so she says this is where the cold stops for her. So. Listen, you said Lynovations is your site. Can I get a spelling on that?
Yeah, it's Lynovation. So
okay.
Lynovation with just one N.
.com.
Yeah, .com.
Okay, and look, I want to get a QRP rig, and the only thing holding me back is accessibility, of course.
Yep.
So I'm super excited. I have an FT90 590. It has the voice chip and all that, but I can see even plugging into that and enjoying
Yeah,
maybe
it
more
does.
accessibility, you
Yeah,
know?
I've worked with several or a couple of hams that have the 590, and we've got it working pretty good with that. It'll even control like the little QCX radio or a
Okay.
KX2 or a
And you
KX.
said, and the Zygu and the
Yeah.
705.
Yep.
Okay.
The 705. That's one thing I didn't clarify earlier. I can't do USB cat control.
Okay.
To do that, I have to become a USB host, which is pretty much impossible to cover the range of radios that use different USB devices. So USB is pretty much out of the question. So the 705 does support internet IP connectivity, which I can do, but they
Yeah.
also threw in there some username and password stuff that
Okay.
I don't know how they do that yet.
Okay.
Once I find out if I can unlock
All
that,
right.
it'll talk to the
Okay.
it can
Well, I
talk to
have
the
the
705. So
well, I have the ICOM control software on my iPad, so I mean, if I was to get a 705, I could navigate it with that. But
right.
I'm sure
And
there's other people that want to get in there.
yeah, I
Sorry, go
think
ahead.
yeah, Marcus actually sells a version of his smart. I think it's SDR control or
Yeah,
control or something.
that's who I bought it from. I bought
Okay,
the
yeah,
that's
and
the
it's going to
Marcus you're
work.
talking about.
The micro will work with that software too.
Okay.
So,
All right. So my question basically is, you said if I go on your website, I could leave you my phone number. I would like to get on a waiting list or whatever the case may be when you get I'm okay with CW, but I would really like to have
oh yeah,
the voice, the speech.
yep.
So could I get on like a waiting list or leave my phone number on your
Yeah,
site?
I don't have anything right now, but I can, if you want to get on my site and just send me a message and tell me, then I'll just put a mailbox in my in Outlook for waiting list for that. I don't have it's just me, so I don't have like a staff to say,
Right.
hey, you do this.
Well,
So yeah,
I'm willing to pay up front, whatever. For me, the price
yeah,
point is just more than reasonable.
yeah,
So
I don't charge it until I'm ready to put postage
okay,
on
well,
it. So
so then I'll just go on your site and leave you a message and
yeah,
drop my phone number, and you can call me at your convenience.
yeah.
Even if it's 3 months down the road, just to know that I'm going to get one of these
Yeah,
devices, or maybe just purchase it the way it is and then wait for the process or whatever you recommend.
yeah, and that's kind of why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. Is the micro is standalone. You can use it today. Gina's using it. She's got two of them.
Mhm.
Robert's got one in the mail that's lost somewhere.
Can you
I hope.
speed up and slow down the CW speed? That's something
Oh
that
yeah,
wasn't.
it'll do
Yeah.
from 5 words a minute up to 100 words a minute. So
Okay, excellent.
cool.
Well, thank you, and I will contact you on your website. And
Yeah,
you are awesome. Thank you for
yeah,
everything you're
and
doing.
anybody that's listening here, if you want to do the same thing, just shoot me an email off the website. Actually, my address is lynn@lynovation.com. So LYNN at lynovation.com. So you don't have to go to my website and find my
I will
contact.
do that. I will do that. And tomorrow night I'm going to my first meeting for a club that I'm going to join up here, and I'm gonna talk about your device, and I'm gonna promote your site.
Yeah, well, and Marcus told me, he says, because he's going to basically put another little, his little app thing, where you buy different things or whatever for his software. He's going to actually put a CTR2 Micro app connection that'll, you click on that and it'll enable the CTR2 interface or changes or whatever.
All right.
And it'll also send you to my website.
Very cool. I'm
Awesome.
gonna
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna
Thank
move
you.
us along here, guys.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Robert.
'Cause go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, Lynn, I just wanted to let you know that Gina did do a podcast that we put
Yeah.
it up,
Yeah,
demonstrating it. It was very good. I
Yeah.
was amazed at how clean the CW was. I thought it was
Yes.
15 words a minute. She said it was up to 20, and I was able
Well-
to copy it with no problem. I haven't done CW in quite a while.
You can on the code report, it goes down to 15 because the micro has a code practice menu in it, and they call it the Koch method. In other words, they tell you don't learn code below 15 words a minute or 10 words a minute because there's a mental block. If you learn it 5 words a minute or 10 words a minute, you're going to count characters, count elements. you can't do that to learn code. And if you learn it that way, it's really hard to get out of that to learn it faster. So it only goes down to 15 on the code report. It'll go down to 5 on the keyer if you want to really slow it down. But and of course the spacing's adjustable. But and you
Good
can.
on you, Angelo, for being able to copy it. I didn't do as well as you on the podcast. I passed the 20 word a minute code test many years ago, but I didn't copy it too well. Anyway, we have a person named John, I believe, with your hand raised.
Well,
Please
we
unmute
had a question pop here about on the code keyer if it had a repeat button, and yes, it does. The first buffer, it has 14 code buffers. The first buffer always holds the last message that you sent. So, but anyway, yeah, John can go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Go ahead, John. We can hear.
Oh, he's still muted.
You.
Yeah,
We can't hear you. Go ahead and try muting yourself one more time.
There.
Hello?
There you go.
Go ahead. You unmute for a second. Okay. Can we go ahead and try it one more time?
Am I muted? Hello, hello?
Yeah, we got. You're good now.
Okay. So now. Okay. So now I have an SDR for the iPhone. I wonder if I could use that. I don't have an iPad.
Well, let me put it this way. I've got an iPhone 11 and it doesn't recognize the micro. I don't know why. I don't know if you have to have a newer iPhone to get it to work or not, but right now it can't see the.
Well, I have a 15, so I don't know.
Might be interesting to see if it'll work. I don't know.
Now, but the real question is, so with all that, could I operate a Flex remotely over the internet using this combination?
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, you can operate it with, actually, I have a demo on my website that shows my iPad working with the micro. In fact, I think the video, I put a video up. I think there's 2 videos on my YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, Lynovation is my channel. And I got 2 videos there. One's an introduction, one's a demo, and I demo the remote operating, and you can key the radio remotely. Like I said, to go outside your home network, you have to push port 4992 through your router out to the wild, wicked world.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, I can do it too.
I have a friend of mine who has a Flex that I can use. He's in Staunton, Virginia. I'm here in Northern Virginia.
Right.
And so if I can get this, that would be really wonderful.
And like I said, you can do that, or Marcus's software can connect through Smart SDR or Smart Link.
Well, wait a minute. What is Marcus's software? That's not Smart SDR. That's something else.
No, he has 2. Well, he has the Smart SDR for the iOS and Mac and the Mac. He actually is Flex's software provider for those 2.
Is that the same thing that I'm talking about?
Right, same program.
SDR?
Yep.
I have a Smart SDR on the iPhone. Is that the same thing?
Right. That's Marcus's software. And that's the one we're working on getting the micro working with.
Wonderful.
So, and unfortunately, he says as soon as I put this up, you better be ready to build a lot of these things. It's like I told my wife, I says, if I got 1,000 orders tomorrow, that's a half a year's worth of work. It takes about an hour to build each one. I mean, I don't know if I want to do that. I'm retired.
Well,
kind of a good problem to have, but not one you want.
I don't know if it'll ever get like that, but I feel good about the 100 that I built so far. So
it would be wonderful because I don't have a good way to do an antenna, and if I can get remotely, that would be really
and there's a lot of my users. That's exactly why they bought the micro, is because they want to control their Flex remotely, and it does network keying and it does network push to talk. So
wow,
so, like I said, you can use the paddles to key up the software on your iPhone to talk. So
So the
it's
paddles hook up to the micro, and then
right.
and how does the micro hook up to the iOS device?
It'll connect to it using Bluetooth. I mean, not
Bluetooth.
Bluetooth MIDI. So it just sends MIDI commands over Bluetooth to the iPad
Well,
or the iPhone.
Does the iPhone or the iPad recognize MIDI or?
Yeah, Marcus's program. If you go into Marcus's program, he's got in his devices list, there is a MIDI option in there, and that's where you go in and map the.
Oh.
And it's really easy to map. You just when I map the micro, you just go to the map your device, and then you just
I
turn
see.
the encoder,
Wonderful.
and it tells you which control is being
Well-
activated, and you say I want that to control this. I want that one
Wow.
to control the volume, and like I said, it's pretty neat, and in
Sounds neat.
it's almost kind of scary to me. So
Well, it looks like I'll be
I
sending
love,
you an email
I-
too.
excuse me for interrupting. I love how
Oh, sure.
excited everybody is about this device, because I am just as excited about it. The possibilities are just amazing
Wow.
here. But I know we have a lot of people maybe who want to ask a question or something. And Dave, you've been trying to get in there for a while. So please go ahead, David, and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, I wonder how far apart the buttons are. Can you add Braille?
the two bottom buttons on the lower left, they're about probably a ½ inch apart, just a little under a ½ inch apart. They're just small little buttons. They're the little tactile buttons. So
Okay, that's promising. And also, how many call memories do you have? Because I have 2 calls. I'm actually located in Dunedin, New Zealand.
it just has one call memory. You just go to the keyer menu and but you can you can actually do that with the with just the encoder. You can change that, but it's easier if you're on the web browser or on a terminal program to change that. But yeah, right now it just supports the one call. So
Okay, that's fine. I don't need the synthesizer. I can handle CW perfectly fine.
Okay.
So awesome presentation. I'll be in touch with the website. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave. Good to hear you. Anybody else have a question or comment? Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Being QRT is a pain in the butt. I want to get rid of it. So thanks for ending my
W5MR, I have a
QRT.
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Marvin, with your question.
Sure, it's a quick question. Do you have any idea as to whether I have an old Yaesu FT1000 Mark V field that I use every day, and I can get to probably 90% of it, but your device would make it a lot easier for me to use that radio. That's the main question. Thanks.
yeah, which one was it again? Which radio?
The FT1000 Mark V
Okay.
field.
I think the FT1000 runs the Kenwood type protocol, like the FTDX does. If it does, then I can work with that.
It uses DB9.
Yeah, the RS-232. Yeah, that that's easy. Oh, and I didn't mention on that because there's 3 different formats. There's 2 options for the micro. You can get internal cat polarity headers where you have to change the jumpers. There's 4 jumpers that have to move around for the different types of different formats, or you can order it with an external facing dip switch that has an 8-position dip switch, and you just set the dip switches for the cat polarity that you're on. Like the inverted is switches 4, 5, 6, and 7 turned on, and the rest turned off. Normal TTL just switches 1, 2, 3. So anyway, that's it can do the RS-232 no problem. It's whether or not the protocol for the FT1000 is compatible with the FTDX protocols. A lot of manufacturers started using the Kenwood protocol. But like Electrocraft, that's what they used, but they tweaked it to their radio and the way they want to do things. So it's not it's a challenge, and it takes a little bit of time, but it can shoehorn in another protocol if that's what it needs to have. But that's kind of where it's at. I can't support every radio out there. I don't use ham live because it's just too much for my little tiny micro. And so I just support the ones that I support, which is pretty extensive. It supports most of the newer radios on the market. So
Right. Well, this is an older radio, and I will go research out what it uses for protocols, and I'll shoot you an email if I find anything out. And thank you very much for taking my question.
And I didn't also mention there's a lot of things with this little guy. One of the things that it does is, for instance, when you select your radio protocol, it'll give you a list of options in the quick key list. You can select from about 13 different radio functions that you can map to one of those button functions, one of the little buttons. I call them multi-function buttons. So for instance, to set your power, you can map the power control to one button, whether it's a long press or short press. You can map bandwidth. You can map anything that's on the list of the 13, maybe it's 16 now. I think I got 16 different radio functions that you can, because a lot of these things are buried in menus and they're hard to find, and you want to just, well, for instance, like the FTDX 101, one of the things you use a lot of is to adjust the gain of the band scope, and that's buried in a menu. But I can program that to one of my buttons, push the button and turn the knob, and I'm adjusting the band. So, there's a lot of things. I've tried to put things in, especially people like using the key or paddles for push to talk control. Just things like that. The users will say, it'd be nice if it could do this. And yeah, it would be. So, it does now. So I just add things as people suggest. So that's where it's at. It's really driven by the users and what they would like to see. So
let's give the opportunity for one more person to ask a question or make a comment. We're running kind of long here, but this has been a tremendous amount of information, and I'm so happy for it. Anybody else want to make a comment or question? Please unmute yourself and go ahead if you do.
This is Rich, KF0LPQ.
Good evening, Rich. Go ahead with your question or comments.
Lynn, I've loved this presentation. I'm a little bit nervous, though, that when you said that it doesn't work with USB connections. I have the ICOM 7300, which has the USB-B cable interface to the computer. Is that not workable then?
Yeah, your speech is, I don't know if it's too loud or garbled or clipping or something. I didn't catch a lot of that. I heard the.
He said he's got an ICOM 73. Said he has an ICOM 7300.
I have the ICOM 7300 that has the USB B port for the connection to the computer.
Yeah, the 7300.
Not a problem then, since I believe you said yours needed a serial port rather than a USB port.
Yeah, the 7300 and the 7610 both have the 1/8 inch CIV jack on them, the control port, and that's where the micro plugs in, is on their 1/8 inch CIV. But you can use it at the same time you're using something else on the USB connection, and that's another thing that I didn't bring up. Like I said, there's a lot of things this thing does, but it does support third-party applications. So like WJST, you can actually connect it to the micro, and the micro emulates a Kenwood TS2000 to somebody talking to it on its USB serial port. So you can map that to your logging program or whatever, and the micro acts as a bridge, and it basically translates their request for the Kenwood to, if you're plugged into an ICOM or a Flex radio, it translates that to the other protocol and sends that message on to control the radio. So it becomes kind of, you just set it to whatever you want. Plus the micro has 10 different radio profiles. So you can program each profile for either different radio, or like the Flex, you could program each profile for a different slice and just switch profiles to switch slices. So it has a lot of interesting things that I've taken from the CTR2 Mini that I incorporated in it. It's actually running the same code the Mini runs. It's just tweaked for the Micro. So
okay. Rich would be able to interface the Micro with his 7300.
Yes, yeah, it has a CIV. I've got a friend, several people are using the 7300. So, and same with my 9700. I just plug it into this control port, CIV control port, and it works good. So, and if you're an ICOM user and you have several ICOMs and you have a CIV hub, you can plug the Micro into the hub and then set a profile up for each one of your radios. Just switch the radio profile to the radio you want to control, and you don't have to change anything other than you do have to change the key wiring. But that can be done with just a little Amazon 4-port 1/8-inch stereo switch. You know, it costs $20 or something. So anyway.
All right. Well, fantastic with all this, all these options and possibilities. I think that we will wrap it up here, so that because I think we've covered so much that people may want to even go back and listen to the podcast to get down some of the details. But Lynn, would you mind just kind of closing out by giving people your one more time, your website, your contact information, so that people can get in touch with you if they want to?
Yeah, okay. My website is lynnovation.com. So LYNOVATION.com. And it's actually CTR2.lynnovation.com, but lynnovation.com will steer to it. My email address is just lynn@lynnovation.com. So I took this, since I'm the do-it-everything guy, I figured it's a unique name, and it's really hard to come up with unique names for your business. So I just kind of, you know, I see myself as an innovator. I'm also a restorator. I take old houses and rebuild them and that kind of stuff. So it kind of fit in with what I like to do. I aggravate stuff. So.
Yeah,
we
very
left
cool.
that
We're
one
so
important
happy.
question there, Lynn. What payment source options do you have?
I can take PayPal or personal check. I used to have a credit card terminal, but for $30 a month, I didn't use it enough to make it worthwhile. So PayPal. And when I invoice you, I'll invoice you for the cost of the shipping. It's generally for the Micro. It's about a little over $4, $4 to $5 anywhere in the United States. Internationally is somewhere around $17 to $20. And I take PayPal, but I'll also, like I said, I'll take a personal check, and if that works for you, just be prepared for delay. It takes longer to send a check across the country than it does to send my package, unless I send it to Robert, and then it gets lost. So, but yeah, I had one user, or one potential customer, that wanted to pay for a check by check, and so he wrote the check out. Took him a day or two to send it to me. It took took a whole week for the check to show up. The day before the check showed up, he emailed me, said, "I've changed my mind. I've decided to buy the Flex knob instead." It's like, okay, that's 4 times more money, but okay. So, but anyway, like I said, if you want to pay by check, I'm 100% fine with that. Just, I'll send it once the check arrives. I'll send it the day the check arrives. So.
Well, Lynn, we really appreciate your coming out tonight and sharing your time with us. It's an awesome product you have, and I think you're going to see a lot more orders than you probably realize.
Well, Well, you know, I'm okay with building stuff. It's like the Heath kit that never ends. And but I, you know, because I love doing that stuff. I love creating things. And you know, so I'm okay. And if it gets to be really busy, I'll start looking for somebody to help me. We have a college over in Pocatello that has electronics program. I'll see if I can talk to the instructor and maybe hire some of his students to put stuff together, kind of like a miniature MFJ. So
No
Okay.
telling what might come out of all this. It's early days and exciting stuff and a lot to think about and a lot to test out, and we are having fun. We'll
Yeah.
go ahead and say 73, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. This has been the Tech Zoom for January 2024. I'm Robert, NC5R. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you all next month. So long from the January Tech Zoom.
73, everybody.
Okay. 73. Thanks.